Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Wisdom Exchange 22. And because Wisdom Exchange 22 is my favorite number, we're going to be doing a special live stream on your golden ratio and really about the numbers of the universe, the numbers which govern our day-to-day lives, both on the macro scale and the micro scale. And we're going to dive into the golden ratio and really explore how does that affect the universe and also how we live and how it influences our culture, different companies and history throughout time. So to understand the golden ratio, we have to understand the Fibonacci sequence. And the Fibonacci sequence is something that turns up in nature all the time. And so what does that mean for us? And after this wisdom exchange, you might go for a walk and you might look all around you, look at the weather, look at the sky, look at the stars, look at the leaves and maybe your own walking pace and realize that this turns up everywhere in the universe. So you can start to begin to ask things about your own life and how these patterns show up. So without further ado, let's start with the Fibonacci sequence. So if you're not familiar, behind me on the board, this side, you start with 1, then you get 1 and you double it and you get 2. And so you get the answer of the first one and you add 2 and you get 3. And so you do 2 plus 3, you get 5. 3 plus 5, you get 8. 5 plus 8, you get 13. 8 plus 13, and so on. So you just keep adding all these answers. And so what you do is you just take all of these numbers, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, and so on, and you basically make space. So if you imagine in the center would be a space of 1, and then you'd go to 2, and then it would gradually keep increasing to 3, 5, 8, 13, and so on. So it would result in a spiral. And what we find is this sequence, this golden ratio, occurs all through nature. So it's not drawn very well, but that's supposed to be a sunflower, but we'll see it later on. So this golden ratio shows up in the beauty of the human face, the beauty in nature, the way we design things. So let me share my screen and give you some examples of this golden ratio, which will be super cool if you're interested in this sort of stuff. So let me share my screen. Yes, you can see that. So for example, we have here, this is what I was talking about, the 1, then the 2, and the 3, and so on and so on. It keeps expanding. And so you'll see that in the spiral of a shell, the same in the galaxy. So you know the ways, in the center of a galaxy is a black hole that sucks up the light, but then the way the planets are dispersed, the way the stars are dispersed through the galaxy is the same. It's the same force governing it, the same mathematical sequence governing it. The sunflower, so it's even efficient, right? Because the seeds are packed together so efficiently over time. Maybe it's evolved a different way, but as we increase the number of sunflowers over time, they'll eventually come to this pattern through evolution, this golden ratio pattern, because that is that mathematical law governing this. I don't know how best to explain it, but it's the golden ratio. And so if you looked at yesterday live stream about your evolution, it was 1 hour, but we started off from the atoms, the very first, from the Big Bang, and really the energy expanding from the Big Bang and the first atoms being formed, hydrogen and helium, and you'll notice how the atoms started to replicate, right, through in the universe, and then eventually stars started to be born and replicate, and eventually, when the solar system started to be born, and the Earth was created, that DNA started to replicate, right, and then you'll see then cells started to replicate, and then the very organisms themselves started to replicate. And so this evolutionary pathway, like we've seen, has that sort of same organic growth, that sort of sequence. And so you'll see this in this plant as well, this hurricane formation, this plant unfurling, the wave, even our thumbprint, the branches, the leaf itself, even small, like even you could imagine that could be a drought, or it could be sort of like the web of galaxies in the universe, or it could be just the arteries in our veins, arteries and veins, or the blood vessels in our skin, right? Or the even the composition of our lungs, all have the golden ratio embedded in this. So that is super interesting. All these examples from the macro scale to the micro scale all has this. So anything that is governed by nature has this. So if you think about businesses and things like that, the way the business processes are, you understand that, especially in the corporate world and industrial westernized world, there's been a certain unnatural effect of the way we've exploited things, and a very structured element to it. But we realize that there's structure here in these examples, but there's also beauty, organic involvement. So actually, how can we take these resonance systems into our businesses and our culture? Well, funnily enough, it does exist in culture, in different native cultures, like the Mayan civilization. I was watching a TED talk by this mathematician, and he talked about how the Mayans made their doors via the golden ratio. And in Hawaii, they actually used certain rituals, if there was like a disagreement or anything, there would be certain rituals to do with emotions that they would do, like a forgiveness thing or like a cleansing thing that also followed the same pattern. So even in the social, I know it's a bit more abstract, like we talked about yesterday, now we've started to evolve social cultures, and the more stable they get, the more they follow this golden ratio. So the resonance in terms of social structures and dynamics also follow this when it's harmonic. So this really has a harmonizing mathematical structure to it. So it can be brought into the social domain. So you can imagine when our social structures get very resonant and very stable, they also, even though you can't see it, it also mimics this. And so if we now go to the kind of less biological and universal era, and how humans now, because it's different, because humans, we can think. So we don't just be, like the universe bees and plants be. And that's why there's a lot of expression in being nowadays, like with all these spiritual talks and stuff, because when we be, the art flows through us. And so, that sounds a bit weird, but what does that mean? How can we let the golden ratio express through us? Well, if you can read here, it transpires, this is from the University of Lancashire, I think. So it transpires that Mozart arranged his piano sonatas so that the number of bars, a bar is a small segment of music that holds a certain number of beats, in the development and recapitulation divided by the number of bars in the exposition, that would equal approximately 1.618, the golden ratio, which is phi. So, the Greeks use this a lot. Mozart in his piano, that the number of bars, in that recapitulation. So actually the number of bars that were played with the stillness in between, that ratio also brings a sense of emotion. So emotion is actually linked to mathematics there. So what emotion, because music is mathematics and music also elicits some emotion. So what emotion does that elicit, the music? And how does that tie to the golden ratio? So you can start to see now that there's a tie between emotion and music, at least Western music. But as you'll know, if you've watched previous wisdom exchanges, that the rags in the Sikh tradition and in the Indian tradition also, we looked at a study where they put they were scanning the emotions of people listening to certain rags, and you'll know that rags bypass that mind into the being state, and they make you feel a certain emotion. And so this is very similar to Mozart's piano piece, where certain musical pieces underlying a mathematical pattern can elicit emotions within you. And so what does this mean, really? What does this mean about us, our emotions, our thought patterns? Our thought patterns just like branches of a tree. And, if you've ever done mindfulness, you'll see that the thought patterns mimic a sort of wave of nature. So that is very interesting as well. So we can see how the abstract, to do with our social patterns and social structure and thought patterns, are also linked to this golden ratio in the way that music, the way that this explains that music is linked to the golden ratio. So is there anything more I want to say on that? Yeah, just that music, like rags, can influence our emotions and bring us to certain states that are more harmonic than others. And so now if we look at logos, for example, Apple, that uses the golden ratio. Twitter, that uses the golden ratio. I think Pepsi as well uses the golden ratio. And even more kind of interestingly is in biology. So if I show you this, Leonardo Fibonacci of Pisa, it's always Italy, he explored this. Maybe I can zoom in a bit. Computational mathematics, but you'll see it reintroduced a numerical sequence which was known to Indian mathematics as early as the 6th century and soon took Fibonacci's name. So this actually came from Indian mathematics. If you listen to last Wisdom live stream, we noticed that the ancient Indians, the oral tradition, they also had a sense of separation, and they were trying to understand the intuitive patterns in nature, and they understood this rajas energy, so like that spiral going up, the tamas energy, and the sattva energy. And they noticed these three energies governing the world and governing, intuitively understood that through their detachment. Also, we seen yesterday as well via the graph that also there was a study in the medical journey for one of the Indian colleges for the Ayurvedic medical journal, that there was also a link between Carl Jung's work in terms of these sattva, rajas, and tamas intuitive models from the Indians, and also the personality based on Carl Jung's work, which was done by ladies called Myers-Briggs, Miss Myers-Briggs, and her mum, I believe. So there's definitely a pattern there. So, some people don't want to be put by a box, but are we indeed governed by nature in the terms of how we're expressing through these energies with our personalities? That is a bit of a mystery, but I'm leaning towards that side. So anyway, to continue, Fibonacci linked this number of sequence to the breeding patterns of rabbits, and again established this uncanny existence of the golden ratio. So you see, there's month 1, month 2, month 3, there's 2 pairs, and 3 pairs, and 5 pairs, etc. And so the resonance accepted this golden ratio as a mathematical doctrine. And you'll see that in Leonardo da Vinci's divine proportions as well. So you'll see now going into the cinematic. So yeah, Bach as well. Bach, you'll know. We talked about the different, this timeless quality of the music, and that uniformly flows through the veins of human experience. So now branching into this woo-woo thing about stillness and being and letting it flow through you. What are you letting flow through you? You're letting the timelessness of this beingness, that weird golden ratio, flow through you, interestingly enough. So look at this golden ratio. If you look at 2001: A Space Odyssey at exactly 6.18, there is this battleships, Potemkin, I think, movie, whatever it's called. But in this movie, these are the golden time points that has this aesthetically sweet time spot, right? Like they have this climatic scene inside the movie as well, the important chapters of this film. So even in cinematography, and even in a single frame of cinematography, they even try to keep this golden ratio, right? So even the Parthenon, I was at the Parthenon earlier this year, and I was listening to one of the audio tours, and they said indeed that the Parthenon used this golden ratio. Also, before I get into that, if you're interested in this paper, just type in the golden ratio in time-based media. And so Socrates said, measure and proportion manifests himself in all areas of beauty and virtue. We talked about virtue and vices in previous wisdom exchanges. We also talked about Plato, Socrates, and Aristotle as well. So you can check out previous wisdom exchanges. But we can start to see how this beauty, how this virtue, how this emotion is all linked to this timeless quality and of this mathematical governance that flows through these arts and things. It's a bit weird to grasp logically, but it's quite interesting. So let me stop sharing my screen. And now, Parthenon, I visited in Greece, in Athens, earlier this year. I was listening to an audio tour, and as I was in Athens, and I could see, wow, it's so beautiful. Why? Because they painstakingly didn't make all the pillars the same, but they used this in accordance to nature, in accordance to the golden ratio. Whether they did that via mathematics or their own, I don't know, being or understanding, or they were in this mental state, I'm not sure. But you can see structures throughout the world. They make this really harmonic, naturally harmonic structures. So the Parthenon had that quality to it. The way the pillars were, they were sort of different heights, slightly different heights, slightly different curvatures, and the roof as well. Then I went to Barcelona and Gaudí. I don't think I exactly have this footage in my Barcelona vlog, but I think on the thumbnail you can see on the Barcelona vlog last year, there's that picture of Gaudí's church, and I think it's still to be finished. But that church, that cathedral, also takes into the natural beauty, the divine aesthetics, that golden ratio. And so that also has a resonant structure. So we explored what the Fibonacci sequence is, how this flows through different artworks, media, logos, biological representation, the structure of our galaxy, time-based events in terms of cinematography. And we also explored the potential link, the real link to Indian mathematics, and then the potential link to the intuitive patterns in, for example, Ayurveda as well, and possibly Carl Jung's work in personality. So when you're out there, when you're walking, See if you can see that golden ratio. See how you can apply it to your life and allow that to flow through you as well, to allow that natural essence to flow through you. So now we're exploring this mathematical link between the being of this thing and it creating itself in a certain form that seems to crop up through the world, through history, through the universe. Super interesting stuff. Golden ratio. I don't know what to make of it yet, but keywords, rhythm, motion, proliferation, iconic, patience, geometry. So you can Google that stuff if you're interested in more. I'm not an expert, but I'm sure there's a lot of mathematical experts if you want to look on YouTube. If you want to find your natural expression, there is a personality package in the description below. It's free. It has 5 personality tests, MBTI, Enneagram, DISC, via strengths. Find out your strengths, find out your natural mode of being, of expression in this universe. And if you're interested to explore more about your personality, because I'm training as a professional coach, you can reach out to me on Instagram. We can have a free session. I'm doing training, so we can have a free session wherever in the world you are and explore your personality and how you can leverage your inner wisdom and pilot your natural personality. So that's all for today for Wisdom Exchange number 22. We're going to finish on 22 minutes. That's the golden ratio. And so today was your golden ratio. Thank you very much, everybody, for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.